So I'm starting that now. Okay.
Should we start over?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm Trustee Matthew Spalding with New College, Florida, and this is a meeting of the Presidential Search Committee. I'd like to call it to order. If you could take the roll and see if we have a quorum.
Okay. We have Mr. Robert Allen,
Present.
Dr. Mark Bauerlein,
Present.
Joshua Broyhill,
Present.
Ron Cristaldi,
Present.
School Board Member Chad Choate,
Present.
Joe Jaco,
Present.
Dr. Matthew Lipinski,
Present.
Alan Levine,
Here.
Representative Fiona McFarland,
Here.
Kenneth Meismer,
Present.
Henry Smith,
Here.
Norm Worthington,
Here.
and Bridget Ziegler,
Present.
and Chair Matthew Spalding.
Present.
Okay, a quorum is present.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'd first like to begin by thanking everyone, both here and online, serving this committee. I'm going to say something in a moment about how important this is, but since we don't necessarily know each other, I'd like to actually ask everyone to introduce themselves. Bridget, can we start with you?
Sure. My name is Bridget Ziegler. I am the chair of the Sarasota County School Board. I'm also the director of school board programs for Leadership Institute.
Thank you.
Chad Choate, Chair, Manatee County School Board and Financial Advisor with Edward Jones.
Norm Worthington, serial entrepreneur, primarily in technology. I'm a graduate. My wife's a graduate. My daughter's a graduate.
You're here.
So
My name's Alan Levine. I'm a member of the Florida Board of Governors. I'm the chair of the Strategic Planning Committee of the Board of Governors. And currently I'm the chairman and CEO of Ballad Health based out of Northeast Tennessee.
And I'm Matthew Spalding. As I mentioned, I'm the New College Board of Trustees. I'm also the vice president of Hillsdale College and dean of the graduate school of the college in Washington, D.C.
I'm Bob Allen. I'm a graduate of New College and a former member of the Board of Trustees.
I'm Ken Meismer, and I was in the charter class at New College and graduated, and am a somewhat still practicing attorney up in Newport Ridgey, semi-retired.
I'm Matt Lipinski. I've taught computer science here at New College.
We have those online as well. So Trustee Cristaldi,
Good afternoon. My name is Ron Cristaldi. For those of you who I haven't met before, I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I am a managing partner and president and CEO of the Shoemaker Law and Public Affairs firm. I'm an alumni of New College and am currently a trustee and have the pleasure of serving as vice chair. Thank you.
and then we have Josh Broyhill,
Hi, I'm a third year political science AOC at New College. I'm planning to graduate next spring, and I'm also a legislative intern in the Capitol.
Trustee Mark Bauerlein, Mark, can you hear us? We'll skip him. Representative Fiona McFarland,
Hi there, Representative Fiona McFarland, and I represent the western part of Sarasota in the Florida House of Representatives.
Mark's having some
It sounds
technical
like
issues.
that was Mark Bauerlein.
Joe Jaco, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Joe Jaco. I'm a partner in the Gunster Law Firm. I served as general counsel to Governor DeSantis during his first 2 years.
And then we have Henry Smith.
Good afternoon. I'm a New College alum. I am on the foundation and I chair the investment committee. I'm an investment manager, a resident in Freeport in the Bahamas.
And Mark, can you try again to introduce yourself?
Yes, Mark Bauerlein. I'm emeritus professor of English at Emory University, an editor at First Things Magazine, and a New College trustee.
And is Dr. Kessler on?
He is not. He wasn't able to make it today.
Okay. Great. Well, again, I would like to thank all of you for helping with this work. This is one of the most important things that a college does, and this committee will be advising the Board of Trustees in doing so. One of the first things I did when I was appointed a trustee, since I'm a professor and I teach history, was to learn as much as I could about the history of New College and its founding as a liberal arts college in Florida, founded by Congregationalists on the principle of non-discrimination. It is a wonderful story, and this is a remarkable school, and I think an absolute gem. And I've come to learn that more and more by talking to alumni like Norm and Bob, and just to Kenneth a bit. So my general points to you are brief and threefold. One is, I think it's very important for you to understand the opportunity before us choosing a president, going through the process of interviewing and selecting them is important in any circumstance. But the opportunities for this place in particular, for given where it is, given its history, given its recent history, given what things are going on in its numbers, we're all familiar with this. The opportunity right now is remarkable, and I think, to be perfectly honest, rather unlimited. And we should approach it with that attitude. Think big. Secondly, I would reiterate again the responsibility. As we'll hear, this is a serious process. We are going about it in the most academically rigorous way we can, taking it as one should, with the great responsibility to this college. As a trustee, along with Dr. Bauerlein and Dr. Kessler, and Trustee Cristaldi, we have a fiduciary responsibility as trustees, but I would suggest you have a very powerful responsibility as well on this committee to advise the trustees. And my third point is that opportunity and the responsibility all points back to one thing, which is the mission of the college. At the very first meeting, and having read the history of this great place, I immediately saw that original mission. That's still the mission. This is the Honors College of Florida. We want to restore that. That's the objective, and that gives us all the more importance to opportunity and this great responsibility. And as a result, we want to ensure that this is a transparent, robust process in order to attract the most highly qualified candidates for the sake of this great college. So first thing I'd like to do is ask our General Counsel, Bill Galvano, to go over the process, also the particulars of our responsibilities, and remind us of the various laws and regulations, whatever they might be, which we will abide by in all circumstances.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. And this robust group has a lot of experience in government task, so to speak, and you have in your packet a lot of the materials that I'm going to go over at what has become cliche, the 40,000-foot level. But I'd start by saying that presidential search and selection it's not an everyday thing, but it is commonplace within the state university system. And not all searches are the same. Obviously, they don't yield the same result, but there are certain strict requirements that we have to follow pursuant to the Board of Governors regulations. And the regulation that spells those out for us is 1.002. And out of the gate, to reiterate what the chairman has said, we are to have a transparent and robust search that results in the most highly qualified candidate and selection that we can have. So in beginning this process, the chairman of the Board of Trustees, Deborah Jenks, was tasked with consulting with the chairman of the Board of Governors, Brian Lamb, to choose the people who are in this room and those that are on the Zoom presently. And that choosing also has specific boxes that need to be checked, that have been checked in terms of the makeup of this board. For example, you need 3 members of the Board of Trustees. There needs to be a faculty representative, a student body representative, someone who's here from the foundation board, consideration for alumni, and from the community as a whole in order to get a good cross-section with different perspectives and as this process begins. The Board of Trustees, and in this case, it's designee, and the chairman, Matt Spalding is the designee, gets things rolling by acquiring or engaging a company to do a compensation analysis. And this is an objective review, and these are established entities to put together the empirical demographic economically. He also has the decision to use or not use a search firm in the process. That is left up to the discretion of the search committee and the Board of Trustees designee particularly. And then to provide this committee with a charge, which you will hear later in this meeting, outlining where we're going and what he sees you doing. As a committee, you have specific tasks. The committee is the entity that has oversight over the web page and the collection of applicant information and the maintaining of that. It will be this committee that works to establish a calendar with an eye towards what is reasonable and practical given where we are, not just in the academic year, but also in coordinating with the Board of Governors, because ultimately what we do, the product that we produce, has to get approved by the Board of Governors. And so we look to see how we can move this process along with the least disruption. Establishing position criteria. And this is very important. This is something that this board will review. Staff will present, and you all will review, and then the Board of Trustees will review and make a determination as to what that position criteria ultimately look like. We will also review this committee a marketing plan, identify potential applicants. And so it's not just a passive duty that you have to wait and receive, but this committee may have discussions about who potentially should be an applicant and frankly, who should be recruited to be an applicant. This committee will vet the applicants against the criteria, conduct interviews, and then ultimately make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees will have its designee do the background checks, and I won't get in the weeds here, and all the necessary things that all of us do in the modern world. And then the BOG member, who is Mr. Levine here, will not only throughout this process keep the Board of Governors up to speed with how this is going, but will also brief them once we have had a recommendation, and when we have a candidate for approval before the BOG, the chancellor will meet with that candidate, and then that candidate will go for final approval before the Board of Governors. And so that's an overview of process. It's my job and the chair's job and really all of our jobs to make sure we are complying with the strict letter and the spirit of the law in this process as it goes forward for the benefit of the institution. The last thing I'll touch on, and the chair had asked me to touch on it, there is a unique aspect to this committee that's really of recent evolution with regard to how we operate from a open public meeting standpoint. As I think everyone knows that's here today or online, Florida has a very robust open government law, a set of laws, and meetings of all boards and commissions, including committees like this, are to be noticed, open to the public, and able to be viewed by the public. There's no exception here. However, when it comes to the actual applicants and their personal information, there is an exemption that now exists in Florida Statute 1004.098. You may take a look at it. that when this board is actually doing the vetting and having the discussion, which clearly identifies the personal information and the identifying information of the applicants, then those sessions or a portion of those sessions relative to that, either way, are to be conducted in what's called a shade meeting, which I think some of you are familiar with as well. Shade meeting means that it's not open to the public per se, but it's not in the dark. We will keep a full record. The law requires that we keep a full record of the activities that take place in those types of
And
interactions.
it's noticed prior to the meeting.
Yes, it is. And so that it is understood that it is occurring and that we are taking steps to identify and vet candidates so as not to relay their information out into the main public stream. When we get to the point that we are discussing finalists or a finalist, that is not in the shade, and that does become public. Also, throughout the process, if the certain demographics of applicants that come in, age, gender, et cetera, those type of anonymous informative characteristics can also be put out into the public. And so we'll, as we do go through our process, we'll make sure that clear distinction of when we are in the shade and when we are not. And, you know, I'm here to help in any way I can. Thank you, Chair. Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a quick question. And if possible, maybe in a little bit, I can make a few comments on
Yes.
behalf of the board, but there was a recent change to the regulation, and this may have been done. I just want to make sure that with respect to the change to the law, the Board of Governors passed a regulation that requires every member of this committee to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Correct.
That is correct.
And has that been done? Or-
That has not been
Okay,
done
all right.
yet, and it was in my notes to share, but
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
no,
get ahead of you.
that's fine, but that's goes part and parcel to the protection of the identity and the policy. I think you all get the policy. If you're going to look for another position, you don't want to endanger the position you have simply by being out there looking for another one. So yes, we have those drafted, and we'll make sure that the members of this committee have them, execute them, and then they're maintained.
Any other questions for council on what he has shared with us? If not, so I'll say a few things, and I want to hear from Mr. Levine as well. But I'd like to point us towards the President's Search Committee charge, which you have a copy of before you, which is consistent with the Board of Governors regulation. And that charge is outlined in the document you have there. I won't read through the whole thing, but I will point out a few things here that I'd like to especially bring to your attention, which is that, as I mentioned earlier, this committee will be recommending to the Board of Trustees an individual who is highly qualified to lead New College, this next president, but it's asked to base its recommendation on criterion adopted by the Board of Trustees with input from the campus community, as well as the Board of Trustees established employment policies. The particulars are largely listed here, Council Galvano has already alluded to. But the last thing I will point to is at the end, both after, of course, extending our gratitude to the members of the committee once again, pointing out that we're going to conduct this with all the academic and professional seriousness appropriate to this very important task. And that's something I assure you and that I will maintain in all circumstances. Generally speaking, or now speaking more broadly, the goal is to conduct this search before the start of the fall semester. It is not required to use a search firm, and because of our timeline and the fact I think it is unnecessary, we're not going to engage a firm to assist us in the process, which is to say we're going to use our own folks here, including our own people to design the materials we would send out as a search committee might do. I have directed the staff to craft a draft position criteria that this group would review ahead of a virtual meeting that we will schedule in May. We're also securing the compensation analysis, which will be included in the position criteria that is already underway. Once this committee approves, we will present these position criteria to the Board of Trustees for their approval. And at that time, we will also present them a marketing plan, the materials which we would send out, the telling about the use based on the criteria, telling about the college, and essentially advertising the position. We will provide everyone a more refined timeline as soon as we possibly can. And we know everybody's schedules is very important, and we value your time. But generally speaking, we will proceed with posting the position criteria, interviewing candidates, presenting our recommendations to the board, and ultimately getting it to the approval of the Board of Governors, as I said, before the fall begins. And I believe the appropriate time, and here I will to our Board of Governors representative, is their meeting in August. Perhaps you can clarify some of that, or if you have other things to add to this schedule.
Sure, Mr. Chair. I thank you. Again, my name is Alan Levine. I serve on the Board of Governors. This is the latest of many searches I've participated in, the most recent of which happened to have been New College when we hired Dr. Alker. So, so here we are again. A couple of things I would say. This is a really important job. The most important thing a Board of Trustees does is hire a president. And having spoken to several members of the Board of Trustees, the feedback I've gotten from the board members is they really put a lot of stock in the work that we're all going to be doing together. And I think that's important from the Board of Governors perspective, because we care deeply about the process and to make sure that the net result is a president that can lead this university forward based on the mission that's established by the Board of Trustees and ultimately approved by the Board of Governors. And to see the people around the table, it's clear the chair of the Board of Governors and the chair of the Board of Trustees took this seriously. These are heavy hitters sitting around the table, people that have been successful alums, graduates, faculty, and esteemed people in higher education who've done a lot of great work throughout the country. So what I would say is this, I think, Mr. President, I have a habit of calling your council Mr. President, having served as the president of the Senate, every search is different, and this one is unique. There's a lot of, I think, very passionate and heated at times debate going on here on campus, which frankly, I think is great. I think that's what it's about. But my concern, speaking for myself, and I think I represent the majority of the Board of Governors when I say this, is we want to get through the uncertainty. We've got to, whatever the decision is, it needs to be made as quickly as practical so that the university can move on with its mission. And because there's a lot of potential applicants out there that might be concerned about applying until they know who's going to be leading the university and what's it going to look like. And so I would only say, look, I'm prepared as the Board of Governors member of this committee, and certainly in any role I can to advise the Board of Trustees to try to be very purposeful with getting this process done as quickly as practicable. I think the faculty and students would benefit from that. And then the state, I think, will be ready to move forward with whatever we can do to support the New College of Florida's future.
And the general timeline outlined here from your point of view is makes sense, because you're talking obviously to the Board of Governors on a regular basis. They won't be surprised. And I would assume they would like to see this done with all due haste.
I think that's correct.
Anybody on the committee have any things they would like to raise or questions about the process has been outlined, or thoughts both here and
I just I'm sorry, I just got a question on timeline.
Yeah.
So in order to meet the rough timeline that you outlined, when would we be getting to the interview stage? Like, well, I'm just trying to imagine how this is going to lay out over the coming months.
Yeah, I'll if you have something to add to this, but I was kind of working backwards from this as well. This is why I put the emphasis on trying to get those criteria and the materials out as soon as possible to give applicants as long as possible to get their application materials in and schedule interviews. But I would assume that means interviews have to be July, very roughly speaking.
And is that probably, again, from as far as the workload, the time for this committee, probably when we are actually at that point that we've had the applicants and we're interviewing them, there's going to be significant time commitment from the committee around then?
Yeah, I would think that the time commitment would be, first of all, up front,
Sure.
working with the criteria and the
Yep.
materials. I mean, I would point out then when we send out materials for a presidential search, that's also a great opportunity to advertise the college. A lot of people will be looking at it. So that's very important. So that's that initial commitment. But then going through applications, candidates, and the interview process is probably the most intense period before we then start moving it up the chain.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you.
You want to add?
Mr. Chair, this is Trustee Cristaldi. Everything you've outlined. First, let me commend Mr. Galvano for a very good and thorough explanation of the process. It's very helpful. Thank you. And everything so far that you've said, Trustee Spalding, sounds on point to me. Perhaps we could just take 1 minute and maybe you mentioned that we would not be using a search firm, which I think in this context, for a variety of reasons that I don't necessarily need to articulate, but I think that's a better choice for us here. But you mentioned that we would internally staff it. Would you mind just taking a minute? Because I do think it's important for record purposes to memorialize the thoroughness and completeness and impartiality of the process that we're about to undertake. Could you just talk for a minute or two about what staff, and I don't necessarily mean by the names of the individuals, but more by position, who would handle placing ads, administering the job description development, helping us cull through those ads, those types of things?
Yeah, I think the probably the most intense work, although we will obviously reach into whatever areas we need to do this work, will be through the council's office to make sure we're doing everything correctly, but also making sure we're hitting all the markers from the Board of Governor regulations. And then Christy Fitzpatrick is staffing the effort generally and oversee working with other new college staff to help us do it. When I refer to doing it all internally, I think there are, one component is kind of tracking everything as we go. One component is the regulatory and legal aspects to make sure we're doing everything correctly. But also another important aspect is just preparing the materials, making them look attractive, and showcasing the college. And those last materials, my understanding is we can do them all internally. We have actually very talented people to do it. But also given the fact that we have done this, we've gone through this relatively recently, we have things we can start with, including places to send it to and contacts and all of that. You have anything to add to that, or?
To Trustee
Yes.
Cristaldi's point, I mean, I know that Christy Fitzpatrick is incredibly competent and has been doing great work for the school for these past months. But I mean, does your office have the resources that you need, given the time constraints that we're under? Does your office have the resources that you need in order to actually be able to adequately staff this?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So I think we do. So we're so as Chairman mentioned, I'll be engaging with several other staff members and units on campus, including our HR department, obviously, and then our communications and marketing office, which we're working on fully staffing at this point. So we'll be working through that, but we do have some materials to work off of. So it won't be starting from scratch and, initially of just having information about the college and all of that. So feel comfortable in getting this completed.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that answers my question. And I'll just note for the record too, for instance, when we recently did a general counsel search, we staffed that internally, to my knowledge, and I served on that committee. Was just prior to the new board members getting on board. So I think there's a precedent to an experience that our staff has, including Christy and the HR department, in handling these things. So thank you.
And of course, finding general counsel, I mean, lawyers are a dime a dozen. Indeed. Point well taken. I think we've got sufficient experience and people here to do the work. Anything else? Other questions or?
Yeah, this is Henry Smith. When I came onto the foundation, I was put on the investment committee, and we started this process of replacing our outside investment advisor. One of the things that we did was to use the Association of Governing Boards to help us put the RFP together. And frankly, that experience was quite useful because neither that point nor I had ever done that before. But I'm just suggesting that maybe it's some part of it, that's a useful resource where members already might be helpful to make use of them through this process they might want.
Good point taken. Thank you. If there are no other questions, we will be contacting you as soon as we can with material. We plan on there being some sort of scheduled meeting in May, a virtual meeting to discuss those criteria and keep alive to communications, as this will be an important process on an important schedule. But as there's no further business to come before the board, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you again once again for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.